Good afternoon, everybody. This is Arun Wadvani from Ingram Microcloud, based in Sydney. Today, we're going to take you through a quick update on the Microsoft 365 Modern Workplace, which is the theme of today's session is around modern workplace and always on security, or Microsoft 365 is the theme. Today, I'm joined by Rob Crane, who's a most valuable player for Microsoft, our MVP for today. He's going to take you through an overview of that particular theme, that topic, and get you up to speed around Microsoft 365. After that, I'll then give you a quick overview of the Ingram Cloud Marketplace, if you've not seen it. I'll also just cover off any promotions that we're running for the month of December, and we'll take it from there.
So what we're here today to talk about is the Microsoft 365 product. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, we'll do a quick overview just to level set this. So there are two SKUs in this offering from Microsoft. So there is an enterprise SKU and there is a business SKU. Okay, so the idea is, again, much like the Office 365 has these SKUs and business SKUs, we see something very similar with the Microsoft 365 product. Now, we're going to basically still be able to sell Office 365. That is not going away, so all the investment that you've made in your knowledge around this product, things like Teams, things like emails, things like SharePoint, and so on, will remain. And then what we do is we have the ability to build on top of this with the Microsoft 365 business product. So what this does basically is add additional functionality, particularly around security and also management, and again, incorporates all the good things that we are familiar with Office 365. The business product, again, is typically aimed at the SMB market. Now, if you do want to scale up beyond the SMB market, the limits that there are around Microsoft 365 Business, typically around the number of SKUs, then you can still go up to a Microsoft 365 Enterprise plan. Now, you can mix and match these plans as you see fit. You can have some users using Office 365, some using Business, and some using Enterprise. But generally what we see out there in the market is that most MSPs, their focus is around providing the additional functionality of Microsoft 365 Business, because it gives the additional security we need, and which we'll cover shortly, and also gives the ability to better manage a lot of these environments and devices which are now pretty much cloud-based. So again, what's the right offering here for the business? So again, some simple questions can help you decide. So the first caveat is around the total number of seats. So again, if it's over 300 seats, you're immediately going to be looking at Microsoft 365 Enterprise, because the business plan is currently limited to a maximum of 300 users. One of the other limitations that you need to think about are some of the enterprise features, things around e-discovery, advanced e-discovery, and typically around PSTN calling, around the voice component. So if you have clients that do need the voice capability, then you're going to need to again look at the enterprise solution here, and that applies also to Office 365. So Office 365 Business will not at this stage be voice enabled, only the enterprise plans are. Now, if you don't need that, and again, you want to do things like the more complex side of Azure AD Connect, you want to do hybrid joins, this is definitely supported and this is definitely workable in Microsoft 365 Business, but the focus for the business product is generally around limiting or removing on-prem infrastructure. So the idea is that in the long term, if you're looking to get rid of the on-prem infrastructure, move to an environment where your machines are basically joining directly to the cloud and Azure AD, then again, Microsoft 365 Business will probably suit your needs. If not, if you're looking for a long-term hybrid coexistence, then the enterprise plans are something that should be considered. And then finally, we've also got the ability here that we do want to do things like the full mobile device management. So we do get things like Intune in part of the product now, and again, we do have some additional features in the enterprise feature that aren't covered at the moment in Microsoft 365 Business. So for example, if you want to be able to use something called conditional access, where you can prevent devices from connecting, say, outside the country or outside a region or not at a certain IP address, then that conditional access, again, is available in the Microsoft 365 Enterprise SKU rather than the Microsoft 365 Business. Now, in general, however, what you find is that the business SKU is probably the one that's going to be best suited to the SMB needs. So again, we have an enterprise SKU, which also has an E5, E3, and a frontline F1 license inside it. We have Microsoft 365 Business, and there is also an educational offering as well. So you can mix and match these as you have been able to for a long time. Now, some of the key differences that we're seeing in the market today around our customers are that they're spending more time collaborating, especially with people outside the organization. So many customers now need to share documents, they need to share information, they need to have collaboration between them and third parties who are outside their organization. Maybe they've got a project they want to do, or again, they've got external consultants coming in doing work for them. How do you do this securely? How do you do this in a manageable way? The next change here is the move to mobile devices. So today, the high-end Apple iOS iPhone is, again, probably more expensive than most PCs, but it is something that a lot of people are more willing to pay. They want to be out and be able to work from anywhere at any time using these mobile devices. So we need to look at this in two ways: enabling those people to get their jobs done, to work, and also then secure those devices, because most of those devices, again, are much easier to lose. They're also much easier to steal. And again, there's something that we really need to take care of, because the corporate information is now on those devices. If those devices are lost, then there may be the need to declare a data breach, because again, that device contains corporate information. Unfortunately, one of the things that we're still seeing is the targeted attacks from cyber criminals aimed particularly at SMB. So the reason that they will target SMB is because they're the low-hanging fruit. They're the easy ones to get through. I don't think there will be a reseller these days that hasn't seen either malware or a phishing attack where the attackers will get in and demand basically a ransom for either unlocking data or tricking a user into doing a bank transfer. So the reality of our world today is that these cyber criminals are targeting the lowest hanging fruit. They're looking for the easiest opportunity. And when you look at an environment where devices are moving outside the organization, they're in the hands of multiple users, they're used on devices which are a combination of home or consumer use and business use, how do we protect these? So this is the really big challenge that we face today, is that data is no longer restricted to the four walls of a business or at the end of a blue LAN cable. So the reality, again, this is caused by is that in a lot of cases we have customers who are using IT systems which they consider good enough. The translation for that is they're trying to save a few pennies because they see IT as an expense rather than an enablement. So what we see out there are things like Windows 7, we see Office 2010, we see out-of-date servers, things like small business server. Again, yes, they served a function. They were a great tool at the time, but it's very difficult to work with these in today's environment and to keep them secure and updated, and also to support them. So a good example in SBS, for example, is SBS doesn't support anything beyond PowerShell version 2. Everything today is generally a minimum of PowerShell 3. If you accidentally install PowerShell 3 on an SBS server, then it can be very, very painful to try and rectify. Also on the client end, we see a mismatch of PCs. We see different versions of Office. Some people running 2010, 2013, 2016. Again, that reduces productivity because people are using different solutions. They have different capabilities in the products they have access to. There's no overarching IT plan to take IT from being an expense to being an enabler. How can the business be more competitive and be more productive by utilizing the latest technology? Technology really needs to be seen as an enabler and the competitive edge in this environment. And again, one of the key things here is that we see that if we aren't enabling our users, we need to secure them, obviously, but if we aren't enabling our users, then our users go out and do things themselves. They go out and get Dropbox, they go out and get G Drive, they go out and basically do their own solution. without telling us, and they just want to get their job done. And so they may be making their business more insecure or opening themselves up to compliance issues. So we need to come up with a solution that is secure but is also able to enable users to get work done and be productive with the tools that they are used to or that are typically available out there that are in regular use today. Okay, let's see if we get to the next slide. There we go. So one of the important things that have come to us in 2018 has been the Notifiable data breach legislation. So basically, this requires an organization to report the fact that customer information has left their control. Typically, what we see is that this happens when a device that a customer controls, typically a mobile phone device, is lost or stolen. Personal information is divulged after a hack, which we seem to see on a very regular basis, no matter the size of the business. And probably the most likely one, when you look at the reports from the data breach site, you'll see that most data breaches come because people have mistakenly emailed information to the wrong recipient. So as we all know, it's very easy to start typing somebody's name in Outlook, and for that to fill it in, accidentally we send it to the wrong person. So how do we implement something that will prevent that? How do we enable that so that the user can still get their job done, but with protection? Now, this data breach legislation does apply to businesses, all businesses, large and small. There are certain very particular requirements around things like tax file number and Medicare number. So if your customers have employees or you have employees, then this legislation is also applicable to you. I would also suggest that it's a good baseline to work with as well. It's okay, this is the reason that we want to make you more secure. This is the reason that we see the investment in security worthwhile, because there is so much reputational damage that can be had by a breach, and there is now also potentially the option to be fined for it as well. Now, remember that also outside of Australian borders, we also have issues that we need to consider around GDPR, so the European Union's laws around privacy and data management as well. If you have customers that deal with European entities, or you have customers that you yourself have customers from the European Union, you will be subject to that legislation as well. My general comment on GDPR is to consider the fact that even though GDPR currently applies only to Europe, there is a good chance that it will be basically a copy and paste, and many governments will implement that as a standard rather than reinventing the wheel. So there's a good chance that GDPR will become a global standard going forward. That's why it's a good aim to try and get to that level and make sure that you implement an environment that is GDPR compliant. So Microsoft 365 Business, how do we solve this? So basically we get Office 365 Business Premium, so we get Word, Excel, PowerPoint on the desktop, we get email, SharePoint, Teams, all that stuff we're used to. But then we add in device management. So we get device management to manage our Windows 10, our iOS devices, we get app protection, and we also get Windows Defender. We also get the ability to do simplified deployment with things like Autopilot. So again, we can produce and we can deploy a systemized and standard environment. We also get the ability to keep these devices always up to date. That, again, is a very important vector when it comes to security, because most of the vulnerabilities attack out-of-date software, stuff that's not kept up to date, as we know, and that's the challenge, right? So keeping stuff up to date is really, really important. And our Microsoft 365 Business will bring all of that together under one roof with one license. Now, the other thing you'll notice here with Microsoft 365 Business, if you have users who have workstations that are on older versions of Windows, so 7 Professional or 8.1 Professional, they receive a free upgrade to Windows 10 as part of their license. So this means you can take an existing Windows 7 machine if you wish, and you can apply the Windows 10 Professional update to it as part of the license at no additional cost once a user has obviously been licensed for Microsoft 365 Business. So again, the 3 core components here are basically Office 365, Windows 10, and the Enterprise and Mobility Suite combined into a single product, which is now known as Microsoft 365 Business. Now, you'll get a copy of these slides after the fact. This is obviously a detailed comparison of the plan. So if you have a look at the rough cost of Office 365 Business Premium, it's about $18 per license. If you look at Microsoft 365 Business for an additional $10 a month, you are getting basically some Microsoft Stream. You're also getting Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. So this is a sandboxing of email attachments. When an attachment comes in, it basically will be opened in a virtual machine inside a Microsoft data center automatically. It will then be tested to see whether it does any bad things. If it doesn't, it will be reattached to the email and sent on to the user. This is an indication that really the only way we can test for some vulnerabilities these days is to actually open the attachment. Our users have done a really good job of doing that on our behalf, but have generally left a trail that we've had to clean up over the time. So having Microsoft do that automatically for us in a data center, I think is a really good move, and is going to improve the hygiene of messages that come into us. Now, we're also going to get, for example, Autopilot. We're going to get Intune as well. So Intune is going to allow us to do the device management of our Windows 10, iOS, and Android. So think of Intune as the replacement for group policy. So it's going to allow us to manage these machines, to push down policies, to make sure it's compliant, to remove applications that we don't wish to have on the devices. It's going to allow us to do a selective wipe, to do a full wipe, so that if a device is lost, we can take basically action to prevent the information being compromised. So that is included inside the Microsoft 365 Business product. You'll notice that we also get unlimited Exchange archiving. So this means our mailbox's size increases from a standard 50 gig up to an unlimited size. So we get a 50 gig mailbox inbox, which you can synchronize to our desktop, and then we get an unlimited archive that we can keep growing as needed. We also now get the ability to do data loss prevention. So DLP allows us to look at outbound information leaving the organization, scan it, and determine whether it breaks any policy. So a good example is with DLP, you could set up a policy that says anytime you see a tax file number leaving the organization, block it or alert the user or take these actions. So DLP is going to allow you to prevent that accidental data breach where someone sends information they're not supposed to outside the organization. Now, an important point to point out here is the fact that anything with a P at the end of it means policy. That means that is where the reseller needs to be involved to create that policy, to enable that for the user, and to consult with the customer to determine what works best for them. So, for example, creating that Office 365 Advanced Threat ability, again, is a policy. You need to say, how do you want to handle it? How are we going to deal with emails? DLP is the same. All of this stuff is going to require policy, which is the consulting component that resellers can value add on top of that. We also get something called Azure Information Protection P1. This allows us to take our information in our documents and embed the permissions inside the document. At the moment, on a file server, the permissions are in the folder or the container where the document lives. If we extract that document and then send it an email, it has no permissions with it. And again, it could be sent on to others, and it could also, again, be taken on a USB drive outside the organization. But with Azure Information Protection, if I embed the permissions inside the document and then say the user who receives this document has to specify or log in using an email address, and then they are only allowed to do, for example, read and print, that's going to give us much better control no matter where the information ends up. We also get things like our litigation hold. We also get an e-discovery component. So a litigation hold allows us to put a mailbox on hold, which means that no matter what the end user does in their mailbox, a copy is always kept that we can then use e-discovery on. Now, you'll notice that if you want features, some additional features like Azure AD Premium P1 or P2, those are also available for you using the Microsoft 365 Enterprise plan. So we have an E3 and an E5, And again, it's going to give you that ability to scale up if you want to. Importantly, the licensing is just a simple change. So if you have customers with Business Premium at the moment, you can just purchase or push in via CSP your Microsoft 365 Business SKU, change the SKU out for the user. That user then has all the capabilities of that SKU. So there's no no tenant migration required. It's just basically a licensing change. And as always, you can scale up and scale down, and it is a per user per month cost. So again, you'll get a copy of all these slides. You can go in and have a look at the low-level details, the differences between the plans, but certainly the Microsoft 365 business SKU, even when compared to the Office 365 E3, has a lot more features, as you can see. So again, E3, the standard E3 doesn't get advanced threat protection. E3, again, doesn't include some of these features like Intune, doesn't include autopilot, and again, doesn't include this upgrade from previous versions of Windows. So when you consider the E3 versus the Microsoft 365 Business, you certainly do get a huge amount of value. Now, I will point out that one of the big differences between E3 and Microsoft 365 Business, as it is with Office 365 Business and E3, is the fact that Microsoft 365 Business still does not have the RDS rights. So if you need to run an environment where your users are accessing Office via a shared workstation or server, so typically a terminal server, then you would still need to look at enterprise licensing to achieve that. But they do get 5 copies of Office on the desktop for every user. So again, when you look at the value statement here, especially around managing devices, the mobiles, protecting information, doing all that sort of stuff, it certainly is really, really good value. And again, in my book, unless you have this specific need for an RDS environment, again, I think you'll find the Microsoft 365 Business certainly has more value. And it's also the option that you can add more services around. So more management, more policy driven, more things that customers are going to need assistance with. Now, some of the products in detail here are going to be, as I mentioned, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. What that will do is it will basically do 2 things a number of things for you. But what it will do, as I mentioned, it will take an attachment, it will open it automatically in a Microsoft data center in a virtual machine. It will check whether it does anything malicious, and then it will either remove attachment if it does or pass it through to the user. So we're getting message hygiene here. Now, not only that, we also get something called safe links. So the way that a lot of malicious operators work is they send a user a link, which is maybe a shortened link. You click on the link, it takes you to a site, whether that's a phishing site or whether that's one that downloads malware, and that then infects the user or looks to capture the user's password. Again, safe links is basically a proxy server that Microsoft maintains, so that when a user clicks on a link in their email, it will go through the Microsoft proxy. The proxy verifies whether it is a known bad site, and then will take action and warn the user. And again, it's driven by policy. Do you wish to allow your users to keep clicking through, or do you want them to prevent it? And do you want to, for example, report this and alert and let the administrator know that there was a problem here? So all of this is beginning to pull together into a single portal or a single environment that Microsoft is going to provide that will give you a security overview of things like Office 365 ATP, Windows Defender, all of these devices that are now connected together using Azure AD and that are now doing security will be reporting back into a central console that can be obviously then set up for alerts and again to take actions automatically. So some of the other things that we've got here that I've mentioned is the data loss prevention is now in Microsoft 365 Business. This allows us to scan for outbound information to make sure that it conforms with a policy that we set. Think tax file number, Medicare number, not being allowed outside the organization. Again, policy means that someone has to set up and determine whether that policy allows the user to send or reports or blocks them. So again, that's where the value add for the reseller is setting these up. We've also got the ability to enforce BitLocker encryption because we want our devices to be encrypted at rest, and we get the ability to manage our PCs, our Macs, and our Android devices all via the Intune management capability now. So again, it brings all of this together, gives a single portal that we can manage this, work with this, and again, apply policies. So again, think of Intune very much like group policy for the cloud. Intune can be used internally and externally. whereas group policy is limited only to PCs inside a domain. So the idea here with Microsoft 365 Business is that we're getting an up-to-date version of Windows and Office, and we can control those and manage those. So again, one of the most important security tenets is always having up-to-date software. That's going to, again, reduce the opportunity for malicious operators to a huge extent. Then we layer on top of that our threat protection, so our virus and our malware. The most important vector generally to check is going to be emails, right? So we've got to make sure that we've got good mail hygiene to, again, prevent our users from clicking on malicious items. Now, no system is ever perfect, right? So again, it's a layered approach to all of this. So we've got our malware and our spyware detection, which is a Windows Defender, comes with our Windows 10 machines that can be managed, controlled by policy set in Intune. So we can require the user to have Defender policies and to do regular scans, and that they can't unload it as well. So again, if you go and have a look at the recent tests between Windows Defender and other third-party options, you'll find Windows 10 is as good as, if not better, than any other AV out there. So if you are using a third-party product, I certainly encourage you to go and have a look at what Windows Defender does provide these days. We want our devices encrypted, so if the device is lost, hopefully it's got a PIN number that we're forced on it with a policy, people can't still break into the information. Two-factor authentication, again, is going to be another one of those big ways that is going to limit the attack surface. Having users do that, certainly you'll need that on your recommended for your administrator accounts, and this is something that we need to be set up, managed on an ongoing basis, and also probably reported to as well. Microsoft give you the ability now to do multi-factor authentication in a very simple way, where it sends you a push notification, you just approve, or it prints a number on the screen and you match the number on your mobile. So again, there are a lot of really easy ways to do this. Microsoft is also now integrating with third-party providers like YubiKey that will allow you to have potentially multiple YubiKeys per account, which again gives you the ability, if you're an MSP and you need to have multiple techs managing a single account for a customer. So that is now becoming more and more possible. We need to protect our mobile device data, so we can prevent users using Intune from copying and pasting from, say, Outlook corporate mail to Gmail and a personal account, so they can't send that outside the organization. Remote wipe, as I said, so if the CEO calls up, so lost my device, I need to get it erased. Well, it'll only work when it's under management. We can certainly do that once we put it under control with Intune. And don't forget that the starting point for most security is going to be Secure Score. So if you go to securescore.office.com, log in with the credentials of the tenant, it will give you a rating. You'll probably find that default ratings for most tenants are a measly 30. I would suggest to you that a good number to aim for is around 200, and it will give you the steps to do that. So if you haven't looked at Secure Score, I'd certainly recommend that you go in and spend some time and have a look and understand what that tool does and how it can help you basically improve the security standing of that tenant. All right, so let's try again the next slide. There we go. Now, the key to all this is Azure AD. Now, Azure AD, like on-prem AD, is the controlling point. Now, because our environment now is based on-prem, is now based in the cloud, now has non-Microsoft apps, Microsoft apps, also has devices. How do we bring all these together in the environment where they could be basically anywhere? The way that we do that is with Azure AD. This is why it's so important going forward to make sure your devices, make sure your environment is connected to Azure AD, which you can synchronize from on-prem. You can then integrate and connect to services like Office 365, your emails, and also SharePoint and Teams. And then we can do the same with our devices. So all of this now gets managed by a single identity, one login for the user, single sign-on for that user, but also we get management. So we can look at it, say, okay, how do we manage our users' devices, desktops, accounts? We do it all with a single item identity, which is our Azure AD. So Azure AD is, again, really where the users need their devices and also that they should be logging in. Now, all the security and compliance items that you need are in the Security and Compliance Center. You find that, again, off the admin console, or you will find that on the front page, generally, of your Office 365 environment. What is available to you on the left-hand side will vary depending on the licenses that you have. So some of the base that I would suggest you certainly need to have a look at once you've assigned the licenses is the second item there is alerts. I would suggest if you go in there and have a look, you'll see there are probably a few standard alerts that have been created. I would suggest to you that it's very important to go in and create the additional alerts that you wish to see. So maybe you want to be alerted when someone shares a file, or when there's a failed login, or all that sort of stuff. You need to make sure that you've set up the alerts to do that. Now, you can do this in two ways. You can do it through the console, but you can also script it using PowerShell. Now, again, I would strongly suggest, as I've always have, is that an investment in PowerShell is going to save you time and effort, and also allow you to replicate results across different tenants. So again, create a script that applies your best practices and use that against all your tenants. Now, Microsoft is moving to an environment where it's classifying data, so it's labeling data. So think of this as basically a label, classification, plus security. So let's say that you create a classification called archive that will allow you to label data to identify it, but also attach, for example, a retention policy to that. So you can say anything that I have labeled as archive, I want to automatically retain for 7 years, no matter what happens to it. All right. So again, the concept here is rather than going in and doing individual items, we create labels and we apply labels to locations, and that makes it easier to classify our information. Data loss prevention, as I talked about, is managed by policy. You need to go in and create the policies. When you enable, or when data loss prevention is enabled out of the box by default, it doesn't have any policies, right? It's blank. Like most of these additional security add-ons we see in Microsoft 365 Business, they're policy-based. You have to go in and add those items, okay? We've also got the ability to do our data governance. You'll find the advanced threat protection and Windows Defender links in threat management. And we've also got the ability to do search and investigation. So we can search our environment. We can look into mailboxes. We can find results for end users. We can also look at our logs to see if there has been suspicious activity. So again, certainly recommend, if you haven't been into the Security and Compliance Center, spend a bit of time in there, have a look at it, create a best practices policy on how to secure a tenant, because out of the box, the security is average. It's designed to be average. It's designed to be the standard for that works with most users. I would suggest to you that best practices is there's a lot that can be done to make that more secure, in fact. All right, so let's go one more slide. Excuse me. So when you do go into that threat management, you'll notice the ATP options at the top here, right? So hopefully you've set up the anti-spam as well. You're also doing things like DKIM and the anti-malware. You've set up the policies to do that. The advanced threat protection will give you 3 new icons across the top: anti-phishing, safe attachments, and safe links. Anti-phishing is actually coming to every tenant. Microsoft's going to deliver that to every tenant shortly. That basically prevents spoofing. It prevents, again, suspect emails being sent between parties, typically asking for payments. So again, that is a policy-based thing that would need to be set up and managed. Safe attachments, I've talked about, again, is a policy-based environment. You need to go in and enable these things. If you use ATP, yes, you get the license, yes, you assign it to the user, but it doesn't do anything out of the box until a policy has been created. So again, work out a best practice policy, and the same thing with safe links, all right? So again, make sure that you understand that anything with a policy generally has not got a policy assigned. You would need to go in and create it and sit down and work out what the best practice is for that. Consult with a customer, and that's where the additional revenue for value add comes for resellers, all right? So again, you've got to take the default environment, apply these additional security options that come with tools like Microsoft 365. And again, I think in today's era, it's so much easier to talk to a customer about security, because again, we're just seeing so many threats. Now, the last piece that I'll talk about here, for example, is this multi-factor authentication and the direction Microsoft's going with its passwordless logins. So you may have seen a recent announcement from Microsoft that it's able to go totally passwordless. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Windows for Business, Windows Hello, it's basically you look at a camera, it recognizes your face, unlocks the TPM chip locally, does a key exchange, and then logs you into something like Office 365. So the big advantage here is from a customer's point of view, I don't have to worry about all these complex passwords. I can just open my PC, it logs me in, it's secure, and away I can go. I can have push notifications. I can have a number appear on the screen and verify that on my mobile. All of this is possible. So again, we can use the latest tools to reduce the pain and improve the security. But again, as I've mentioned, the reality here is all of this is going to be something that a reseller needs to set up and enable. It's not turned on by default. How are you going to manage that? How are you going to control it? How are you going to monitor it? And we can also build on this and extend this further with additional tools. So, for example, we can take the tools that come with Office 365. We can then add Microsoft 365 Business, which gives us even more control and more features. After that, we can add things like Azure AD Premium. We can add Cloud App Security. We can add all of these flavors of security from Microsoft on top of what has been provided, and again, build a more secure environment. So the slide here gives you a feeling for all or many of the options that Microsoft does provide when it comes to protecting information. Most of those are provided with Microsoft 365, but for example, there are additional ones if you want, again, further granular, if you want further logging, if you want further control, if you want things like conditional access to prevent users doing things from certain locations or certain IP addresses, or set up trusted IP addresses so they're not asked for MFA when they're inside the business behind a set IP address. So again, don't just think that Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is the end of the offering that you can go to a customer when it comes to security. Again, my advice to you would be is create a best practices, whether that includes Azure AD Premium or what. Go to the customer and then say, look, you know, our recommendation is this for these reasons, and then you can be custom tailored to suit that customer. And again, gives you that comfort that you've talked to the customer, you've explained to them security, you've made their environment as secure as possible by configuration, but also additional items that have been added that are available from Microsoft, all nicely integrated together. And the benefits I see it, if you step back from it, are one, that all of this is basically managed by a single identity, being Azure AD for the user, for reporting, for configuration, and so on. And the second big benefit is all of this can be configured with something like PowerShell. So we can set up a PowerShell script to set up our DLP policies, to set up our advanced threat protection policies. We can do all of this in one environment, and one environment, less components here, generally leads to it being more secure and also makes it easy for us to set up as resellers. So I think that's an overview of what's available in Microsoft 365 Business. There are lots of features. I'd certainly call out the features that you don't see in Office 365. So information protection, advanced threat protection, data loss prevention, and things like legal hold are going to be fairly easy sells to go to customers and say, these are the business benefits of implementing these additional things. And we get all of this plus additional management and control with the Microsoft 365 Business. Plus, if you want, you get potentially an upgrade to Windows 10 Professional as well. So there's a lot in there. If you're selling to SMB, if you've typically sold things like Office 365 Business, I'd encourage you strongly to go and have a look at what Microsoft 365 Business offers, and particularly offer it in light of what security add-ons and features it does provide customers to make their environment more secure. So I think with that, Arun, I'm done, and I will hand back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Rob, for that great introduction. What we'll do now is we'll just open it up for questions for Rob based on the content that he's just shared. So feel free to send any questions you have through the chat box, and then we'll address those to Rob. So I'll just give you...
we only take the easy ones, Arun.
I get the easy ones, don't I?
There you go. There's a volunteer. Everybody ask Arun easy questions.
Okay, we'll just give that a moment.
So Arun, while we're waiting for those questions to come through, from your side as a disti, how are you seeing the take-up of Microsoft 365 Business? What are you seeing from the resellers out there who are jumping on board?
We're seeing a lot of partners who are now seeing the advantage of offering Microsoft 365 as part of a bundle, particularly around their security practice, where it's an opportunity for partners to go in, add value to their clients, talk about the vulnerabilities that they can potentially see for their customers that they are managing today, and by moving them off perhaps Office 365 onto Microsoft 365, helps to add more value to your customers. Potentially you can charge more for your services around that Microsoft 365 offering and provide higher levels of security and overall service to your clients. So we're seeing really good traction in the market, and we believe there's a great opportunity for partners as we go into 2019.
Excellent. All right. Are there any questions?
Okay, I think we're pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll just...
all right, none yet. All right, let's go on, and if they do come in, I'll be here in the background, and I will do my best to answer them.
Great, thank you, Rob. So this is Arun, I'm back again. I'm just going to quickly take you through the cloud marketplace. Now, if you have been a customer of ours before and already on the marketplace, please do bear with me, because a lot of stuff that you'll see, you will of course be very familiar with. However, there will be people on the call also that the cloud marketplace is very new to them. And this is a great opportunity to get that first overview, and obviously feel free after this to reach out to me or any of the cloud sales team should you need any support on placing your first order or need to understand a bit more about how all this works. So really, the CSP program is our key product, essentially listed on the cloud marketplace, Office 365, Microsoft 365, and of course Azure. If you're not familiar with those products, of course, feel free to reach out to any of the team. Really, we have the solution in one area to make it easy. It's a one-stop shop for ordering, provisioning, managing, and of course, billing your clients. We try and make it as easy as possible. Essentially, the marketplace is more than just a e-procurement platform. We have the ability for your customers to place orders through the customer control panel. The management is all offered through the reseller control panel. And I'll talk to you a bit about the advantages now on the new version of the reseller control panel, which we nicknamed as UX1, User Experience 1, and some of the advanced features that's coming through there. When you're ordering your new subscriptions for the very first time, that's on the left where you'll see select an order, and you'll see there we've got the cloud marketplace. That's really for provisioning those first environments for your customer. That's really for ordering your Microsoft 365 and to get those provisions underway with direct integration into the Microsoft platform. Then from there, once you've got those services fired up for your customer, then the admin of that moving forward, for example, if you want to change the number of users, decrease or increase, or cancel that subscription, should you need to do that, that is all managed and controlled through the reseller control panel. So it's a single interface, it's all very simple to use, it sits on a single platform formerly known as Odin, and again, we're happy to take you through that in a lot more detail. So those of you that haven't seen the cloud marketplace before, if you go on to the cloud marketplace under business applications, you'll see I've marked there with a red arrow the Microsoft 365 on the right, and also there you've got your Windows 10 Enterprise underneath there. If you want to just log into the marketplace, you can go into log in there. If you don't have access, again, feel free to reach out to us and we'll provide you credentials to do that. Once you're logged in there, you would go into either the Microsoft 365 monthly or annual billing options. In this case, I've marked an arrow to show you the monthly option. From there, you just click on the next page where you agree to the terms and conditions, basically for upgrading to Microsoft 365. You need to confirm that your customers are using Windows 10. That's a requirement, obviously, to buy Microsoft 365. And, of course, users on Azure Active Directory for identity management. Then from there, we will take you straight through to the Microsoft 365 platform, where you'll see the detail there on what's required around Microsoft 365. And then from there, we can look at the options. So Rob's already covered off Microsoft 365 for Business, with the core product at $22.70. Then from there may be requirements to order additional options, for example, the advanced threat protection, or for example, the stream for Plan 2. Any of those additions can be ordered there, and you then can click on Continue. Then from there, this particular case, I've gone with the monthly option around Microsoft 365 and the ATP. one user of each. Then from there, you just check the quantity, check the values, and make sure that's everything that your customer is looking for, and you click on proceed to the checkout. Then from there, as a new customer, you'd either go to an existing customer, which is one of your existing clients that may have, for example, bought Office 365 in the past, but you may then want to actually go in and create a new user for a new client. From there, you would just go into click on the new user. Then from there, you add in the details just as normal, so first name, last name, email address, physical address for that particular client, and then from there, you would then place your order just as normal. Also, I mentioned this is now the Reseller control panel. This is the new version that we actually went live with about 4 weeks ago. This is a much more convenient user interface. It's a lot more modern. It's a lot more enticing for people to use. But of course, we do have customers that do prefer our classic version as well. That is still available to you under the classic panel, which I've marked there again with an arrow. Then from there, that takes you into the billing section under the Reseller control panel. And then from there, you can check your orders. You can look at reports. For example, if you want to identify things like cost of goods reports for your clients, or for example, you want to make changes around the existing prescriptions, all of that is available now through to you on the classic panel as well. This is what it looks like if you've not seen it before. This is, you can see the list of all your customers in one place. It's basically a very convenient place to see that, and it's all managed through our typical traffic light system there. So you'll see it's actually marked in green. So you see the status on the right there shows completed with a green tick, so that you know those systems are live and up and running for your clients. It's just a very simple place to be able to see the status, arrange subscriptions, and if for any reason something is actually put on hold, for example, there may be some credits that we need to set up for you, or you may be over your limits, you'll then see there that will notify you that something's not right, and then we can just get that checked and cleared off for you. But we expect that to be green at all times where possible. Just quickly, closing off, we have some great incentives for December, particularly around Microsoft 365, surprise, surprise. On there yourself includes the portal to the ingrammicrocloud.com.au/cloud-promotions. So we always keep that website up to date with the current promotions. That's not just for Microsoft, that's for all the promotions that we're running currently in the cloud marketplace. Feel free to look at those whenever you need to, and we will keep those up to date for you. So just to quickly get you across the Microsoft 365, these are the Microsoft incentives around earn an extra $45 per seat for each Microsoft 365 seat that you sell. Alternatively, let's get rid of that. We've also got the Ingram offers as well. So these are coexistent. So we're basically giving you 2 offers, and we're actually giving the offer of a $10 cashback rebate per seat sold as well. So basically by saying Microsoft 365 is very lucrative for you, particularly in the month of December. In addition, you may receive notifications from both Microsoft and from Ingram over the last week or so, notifying you that there is going to be a price rise for Microsoft CSP effective from January 2019. So therefore, that means any subscriptions that you start in the month of December, whether they be annual monthly SKUs, you get the advantage of the price that there is today, which essentially is up to 8% cheaper than what it will be in January. So if you are always talking to your customers today and you identify that they potentially do want to start either an Office or Microsoft 365 subscription, now is a great time to go back to them in the month of December and just get them across the requirements there and potentially beat that price rise. Also, for December, we've got the Office 365 incentive as well. So get a $50 Visa card for new subscriptions, and potentially also $100 as well. So this is for our eligible partners. Feel free to have a look at that, and if you have questions around that promotion, either look on the website or contact any of the sales team for more information on how that works. Lastly, the December incentive for the Azure program. So we're offering up to a $2,000 cash incentive under the Azure Accelerate incentive, and that's really for bringing on your first month's service. We'll give you $1,000 back to help you around margins there. If you keep that service going for month 2 and then month 3, we'll give you an additional $500 per month. So essentially that gives you a $2,000 incentive bringing on those new customers onto the marketplace around your Azure, only on the CSP program. That's really all I have today. As I mentioned, feel free to reach out to the team. The Sydney number is 0293816735, or you can actually come onto the marketplace and have a look at any of the products we have for sale there, when we're here to help you. Or of course, you can just email the team at that email address there. Thank you for those that have attended today. I will just briefly pause for any questions.
We do have a question in there that I have answered, but let me just. So one of the questions was around larger clients using RDS in E3. The only option at the moment for them, yes, is to stay on the enterprise licensing, so they could go Microsoft 365, Enterprise E3 and retain those RDS rights, or you could look at just purchasing Office Pro Plus and using that for the people that need licensing and combine that with Microsoft 365 Business. But at this point in time, Microsoft 365 Business does not support the RDS licensing. Now, the thing that will probably change in a short period in 2019 will be the release of the Windows Virtual Desktop. So we expect to see basically a VDI style environment provided by Microsoft that will be optimized for Office from Pro Plus. That will be available in the Microsoft 365 a range of products. So again, I would suggest to you that going forward, the replacement for the RDS role is going to be the Microsoft Virtual Desktop when that is made available.
Well,
excellent.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. I know it's coming up to Christmas and a very, very busy time for a lot of us. So thank you for joining the webinar, and we wish you well from a very wet Sydney. Thank you so much. Bye now.
No worries. Bye-bye.